You are listening to Your Money or Your Life by Vicki and Joe Dominguez. This is not just a book about saving money, it is a book about saving your life. Your money or your life challenges one of the most deeply accepted beliefs of modern society, that money is just something we earn and spend. Instead, it asks a far more powerful question. How much of your life are you trading for the money you make? First published in the early 1990s, Your Money or Your Life has quietly transformed millions of lives across the world. Long before ideas like financial independence or early retirement became popular, this book introduced a radical yet simple idea. Money is life, energy. Every rupee or dollar you earn represents hours of your limited time, attention, and effort. The book teaches readers how to become conscious of that exchange and how to align money decisions with personal values, peace of mind, and long-term freedom. Rather than promising quick wealth or shortcuts, this book offers a step-by-step path, a path to regain control over finances, reduce unnecessary consumption, and reach a point where work becomes a choice, not a compulsion. Vicki is a social innovator and writer known for connecting money, values, and purposeful living. Her work focuses on helping people design lives that are both financially and emotionally sustainable. Joe Dominguez was a financial analyst turned teacher who lived the principles he taught. By simplifying his life and investing wisely, he achieved financial independence at a young age and spent the rest of his life teaching others how to do the same. Together, they created more than a finance guide. They created a life philosophy. Decades later, Your Money or Your Life remains deeply relevant. In a world of constant pressure to earn more, spend more, and chase more, this book gently reminds us of a timeless truth. Enough is not a number. Enough is a feeling of alignment. As we begin this journey, reflect on one simple thought. If money represents your life energy, how consciously are you spending it? Let's begin. Part 1. Redefining the problem. Chapter 1. The root of our money troubles. Think about the first thought that crossed your mind when you woke up this morning. For many of us, before our feet even touch the floor, a familiar and quiet anxiety begins to hum in the background, the hum of obligation. A mental checklist of things to do, bills to pay, and hours to trade immediately takes over as we get up, go to work, earn, spend, and wake up the next day to repeat the same cycle. We call this making a living, but if we pause and listen closely to that constant hum beneath our routines, a deeper question emerges. Are we truly making a living, or are we slowly making a dying? We live in an era of unprecedented abundance, where by nearly every historical measure we possess more wealth, comfort, and access to resources than any generation before us. Our incomes are higher, our homes are filled with modern conveniences, and our basic physical needs are largely secure, yet something essential still feels missing. When we look closely at the people around us or at our own reflection, we rarely see peace, but instead see exhaustion and a low-grade, perpetual sense of panic. Despite earning more, we feel perpetually behind, running faster simply to remain in the same place on a treadmill that never seems to slow down. This is the great paradox of our time. We have more money than ever, yet less freedom, because we are trapped in a system that demands infinite growth from finite human beings. When this stress arises, our instinct is to focus on numbers, believing that a raise, a promotion, or a better budgeting method will finally erase the anxiety. We treat our money troubles as a math problem, assuming that somewhere there must be a missing formula. But the root of our money troubles cannot be found in a spreadsheet. Because while mathematics is neat and finite, human desire is messy and endless. Our financial struggles are rarely just about money. They are life problems, psychological, emotional, and deeply human struggles disguised as bank statements. To understand this, we must examine what money truly represents in our daily lives, beyond society's idea of it as paper, digits, or a simple medium of exchange. Money is not free, because we pay for it with the most precious and irreplaceable resource we possess, our time. And time is not merely hours on a clock, because time is your life itself. When you go to work, you are trading your life energy or physical vitality, mental focus, and emotional reserves in exchange for a paycheck. Think about the exhaustion you feel on a Thursday evening, the dread that creeps in on Sunday night, and the desperate way we chase weekends to compress a week's worth of rest and joy into just 48 hours. We are trading our finite existence for currency, yet rarely pause to weigh our daily purchases against the true cost of what we gave up to obtain them. This disconnect is where the modern economic machine captures us, as we work long hours at draining jobs that leave us depleted, stressed, and empty. To cope with that emptiness, we seek comfort by buying things, using consumption to recover from the very stress caused by the jobs we work to afford those things. This creates a closed loop of exhaustion and consumption that quietly repeats itself day after day. As incomes grow, a silent and insidious force takes hold: lifestyle inflation. The luxuries of yesterday slowly become the necessities of today, and what once felt sufficient now feels inadequate. A modest home suddenly feels too small, and a reliable car feels outdated. Not because it has failed, but because something newer exists. We absorb constant pressure to keep up, not only with neighbors, but with a carefully curated version of reality broadcast to us every minute of every day. Over time, we begin to measure success by what we consume rather than by the peace we possess. This comparison game is unwinnable, because there will always be someone with more. When we tie our self-worth to spending power, we place ourselves in a permanent state of lack. We become rich in possessions while growing bankrupt in time, energy, and spirit. We trade peace of mind for the brief thrill of a purchase, only to watch the thrill fade, the bill arrive, and the cycle send us back to the same exhausting work. But the moment you recognize this cycle is the moment it begins to lose its grip on you. The realization is not that you must be richer, smarter, or more punishing with yourself. The realization is that the problem is not a lack of money, but a lack of clarity. We have forgotten what money is actually for, allowing it to become the master of our lives rather than a tool to support them. When clarity is absent, we default to society's definition of success, which always demands more consumption. But when your own values become clear, the noise begins to fade, and your bank account stops being a measure of your worth. Instead, it becomes a reservoir of your life energy. You begin to ask new questions about the true cost of your choices. Is this purchase worth the hours of my life it took to earn it? Is this lifestyle bringing genuine peace, or is it adding more maintenance, worry, and obligation? To heal our relationship with money, we must bring it into the open without shame or fear. We must honestly acknowledge the toll that mindless accumulation has taken on our well-being, our relationships, and our quiet moments. The root of our money troubles is not that we are broken, but that we have been following a broken set of rules. We have been chasing an ever-receding horizon, believing fulfillment lies just beyond the next raise. But what if the horizon is not the destination? What if the goal is not infinite accumulation, but safe arrival? And what if the antidote to the relentless pressure of modern life is not getting more, but finally understanding what it truly means to have enough? Chapter 2. Enough is enough. Imagine standing on a vast plain, looking toward the horizon, where that distant line represents a promise of ultimate success, absolute security, and lasting happiness. We begin walking toward it, yet the horizon, by its very nature, always remains the same distance away, no matter how far we travel. This is how most of us have been taught to navigate life, especially when it comes to money and success. Believing that security is just one promotion away, happiness lives in the next income tier, and peace of mind will arrive once we accumulate a little more. So we walk, then run, and eventually sprint, eyes fixed on that distant line, wondering why we never seem to arrive. Our culture quietly operates under an unspoken rule. Whatever you currently have is not quite enough. It whispers that a slightly bigger home, a higher salary, or a more elevated lifestyle will finally make you feel complete. We measure ourselves against the people around us, or against the carefully curated lives displayed on glowing screens, comparing our everyday reality to someone else's highlights. Yet we rarely stop to ask the most important question of all: does acquiring these things truly improve the quality of our days? Or does it simply increase the cost of our existence? The truth is, the fundamental problem we face is not scarcity, because the world produces more than enough to sustain us. The real problem is the absence of a personal, deeply felt definition of what enough actually means. Consider the professional who has steadily climbed the career ladder for years. If you told their younger self how much they earn today, that younger version would be astonished and convinced they had achieved financial success. Yet today, the anxiety they feel when looking at their bank account remains unchanged. They earn more than ever before, but feel no safer, no more secure, and no more at peace. As their income expanded, their definition of what was necessary expanded alongside it, and the target simply moved. They are making more money but still living in the same state of psychological scarcity, convinced the next raise will finally bring relief. Now consider a family that upgrades their lifestyle, moving from a modest, functional home into a larger house in a prestigious neighborhood. From the outside, it appears to be a clear marker of success. But quietly, a silent exchange takes place as the larger home brings a bigger mortgage, higher taxes, and greater maintenance. To support this new baseline, the parents must work longer hours, take on more stressful responsibilities, or endure longer commutes. Their physical space has grown, but the space for rest, connection, laughter, and health slowly disappears. They have traded irreplaceable time and peace of mind for extra square footage they barely have the energy to enjoy. Then there is the trap of the deferred life, where rest and fulfillment are always postponed to some future milestone. We tell ourselves that once we reach a certain income, once the children finish school, once the debt is gone, then we will finally relax and start living. But the human mind, left unchecked, always invents a new emergency or desire. Each time a milestone is reached, a new one replaces it, and the finish line is quietly moved further away. Life becomes an endless waiting room, where the present moment is constantly sacrificed for a future that never fully arrives. This is the inevitable result of living without a personal definition of enough. More becomes a hungry ghost, a moving target that drains our attention and consumes our life energy. But what if we chose to stop running and define the finish line for ourselves? To say the word enough is one of the most radical and liberating acts a person can make. In modern culture, enough is often misunderstood as limitation, settling, or a lack of ambition. But true enough is not about deprivation or abandoning dreams. Defining enough is an act of profound enough is the point where you have what you need to live with comfort, meaning, and joy, without carrying the exhausting burden of excess. Anything less than enough is a struggle for survival, but anything more than enough often becomes a source of stress, maintenance, and worry. When you shift your focus from external measures of success to internal sufficiency, your entire world begins to change. You start valuing your time, your calm, and your freedom more than the accumulation of objects. You realize that a quiet morning with a cup of coffee and an unburdened mind is a luxury no amount of money can nicely buy. Finding your personal enough requires courage. It asks you to gently detach from societal expectations and turn inward. It requires you to stop comparing and instead notice how you actually feel at the end of each day. Ask yourself when you last felt that you truly had enough, not to impress anyone else, but enough to feel safe, content, and able to breathe. This realization is the first crucial step toward true financial independence. But awareness alone is not enough. To move from understanding to action, we must bring our finances out of abstraction and into the light of reality. We must shift from vaguely feeling the weight of obligation to clearly observing the flow of our life energy. And we must examine our financial past and present honestly, without judgment, but with open and steady eyes. Part 2. Transforming Your Relationship with Money, Chapter 3. Making Peace with the Past as we move into the third chapter of our journey together. Take a moment to settle in. Breathe deeply, let your shoulders drop, and allow yourself to feel safe and calm as we prepare to look gently at your past relationship with money. For many people, looking back at their financial history feels like entering a room that has been locked for years, filled with tension about money spent, debt accumulated, and opportunities that feel lost. You may notice physical reactions, such as a tight chest, embarrassment, or regret. And if you do, know that these feelings are completely normal responses to a topic that carries deep emotional weight. We often tell ourselves that avoiding our finances is about numbers, disorganization, or lack of time, but the truth is softer and more complex than that. What we are really avoiding is a story we fear those numbers tell about us as people. We worry that a messy bank statement proves irresponsibility, that debt proves incapacity, and we allow financial records to become judgments of our character. To truly move forward and transform our relationship with money, we must first make peace with where we have been. A healthy financial future cannot be built on guilt and shame, because those emotions act like fog, obscuring the road ahead. Consider someone we will call David, a capable and intelligent man who excels at work but feels panic each time his credit card statement arrives. Instead of opening it, he places it in a drawer, and over time, the drawer fills with unopened envelopes that silently grow more frightening. David tells himself he will deal with it later, when he feels stronger or has a better month, but his avoidance is not about the balance itself. It is about the meaning he assigns to that balance, believing it proves failure, and so he looks away. This pattern is common, as we hide from the past in an attempt to protect ourselves from pain. But avoidance gives the past power, turning unopened envelopes into imagined monsters that grow larger in the dark. Now consider Sarah, who earns a high income and appears successful by every external measure, yet carries constant guilt and fear. She worries she does not deserve her wealth or that one mistake could make it all disappear. When she looks back at past purchases, she feels remorse instead of joy, judging her younger self for not being smarter or more perfect. Her financial history becomes a source of anxiety rather than pride. As she judges yesterday's decisions with today's knowledge, many of us are also living out financial stories that were never ours to begin with. Patterns passed down from parents or grandparents quietly shape how we relate to money, without our awareness. A child raised in a home where money caused conflict may unconsciously learn that money equals danger. As an adult, they may sabotage financial stability because safety feels unfamiliar. Someone raised in scarcity may hoard resources later in life, unable to enjoy abundance even when it is present. These behaviors are not moral failures, but learned emotional responses. Recognizing them is not self-blame. It is an act of freedom. When we view our financial past with compassion instead of judgment, the relationship begins to shift. We must stop treating the past like a courtroom and start seeing it as a classroom. Every dollar spent, every debt taken, and every missed opportunity was a decision made by a younger version of you doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. Judging your past self with present wisdom is an unfair comparison. Making peace means acknowledging reality gently and saying, "This is what happened," without labeling it as good or bad. It means forgiving the version of you that shopped to soothe loneliness. It means forgiving the version of you that borrowed money in optimism or avoided statements out of overwhelm. Forgiveness is not sentimental, it is functional. When you stop suppressing guilt and hiding shame, that energy becomes available for clarity and change. Imagine standing in a cluttered room and judging yourself at the doorway, unable to move because of shame. You cannot clean the room while berating yourself. But when you step inside and simply acknowledge the clutter, action becomes possible. This is what we are doing with your financial past. We are turning on the light and realizing the monsters were only shadows. While we cannot change past decisions, we have full agency over how we relate to them today. There is profound relief in no longer hiding. Lightness enters when you realize your net worth is not your self-worth. You are not your bank balance or credit score. You are the one observing them and choosing differently now. As we move toward practical steps, this emotional clearing is essential. To see money clearly, we must first wipe the lens of regret and shame. Take a moment to offer kindness to your past self, the version of you that was scared, imperfect, and doing their best. Tell them it is okay, that you are here now, aware and ready to move forward. By releasing the past, you create open space for new understanding. In that space, money can be seen not as a judgment of your worth, but as a neutral and vital resource. Money is simply something that flows through your life, inseparable from your time and energy. With the weight of the past set down, we are ready to walk lighter. We are ready to examine what we trade when we work and what we receive when we spend. And we are ready to understand money not as a source of shame, but as life energy. Chapter 4, Life Energy, the Real Cost of Money. Let us begin this chapter by setting aside everything you think you know about currency, forgetting coins, screens, and market language, and imagining instead that every time you open your wallet you are reaching into something far more precious and irreplicable, the substance of your own existence. The core realization we are exploring is simple, yet life-altering. Money is not merely a medium of exchange. It is something you trade your life for, and it is your life energy. When you go to work, you are not just completing tasks or providing services, but giving up a portion of your limited time on Earth, along with your physical strength, mental focus, emotional intelligence, and creative spark in exchange for a wage. That wage represents a specific portion of your life that is now gone forever, because while you can always earn more money, you can never earn more time. Your life energy is the only true currency you possess, and once it is spent, it cannot be recovered. When you begin to see money through this lens, the meaning of a price tag changes entirely. A $50 dinner is no longer just $50, but perhaps 2 hours of your life energy. A new car is not merely a monthly payment, but potentially a year or more of your presence, stress, and labor. When you spend money, you are not only spending capital, you are spending yourself. To fully understand this exchange, we must look more closely at what our work actually costs us. Most of us define our value by an hourly rate or annual salary, but that number hides the real cost of earning. To find your true hourly wage, you must account for the hidden drains on your life energy that your job requires. Consider the commute, where hours spent traveling each week are hours of life energy given to work without compensation. Think about the clothes bought solely for work, the dry cleaning, the specialized equipment, and the meals purchased because exhaustion has replaced time and energy. Then look at the emotional costs, including the time spent decompressing after difficult days, staring at screens because your mind is too tired to engage with life. There is the sleep lost to worry, the physical toll of repetitive labor or long hours of sitting, and the quiet erosion of freedom. When you are at work, you are not free to walk in nature, play with your children, or sit in reflection. You have traded that freedom for a paycheck. Consider someone we might call Alina, a successful project manager with a high salary whose life feels like a constant blur. She wakes early to beat traffic, fueled by caffeine, and spends her days navigating pressure, meetings, and conflict. By the time she gets home, she is depleted, ordering takeout because she lacks the energy to cook, and outsourcing household tasks because her weekends are spent recovering. Alina believes she is wealthy because her bank account is full. But if she calculated her true hourly wage subtracting commuting costs, work expenses, convenience spending, household help, and recovery time, she might find she earns far less than she imagined. More importantly, she might realize she is trading her health, presence, and best years for things she buys only to compensate for having no time. She is trapped in a loop, spending life energy to earn money, then spending money to reclaim fragments of the life she lost. This is not a criticism of hard work, nor a call to stop working, but an invitation to see clearly. When we forget that money is life energy, we become vulnerable to the illusions of consumer culture that tell us to upgrade, chase convenience, and want more. Often, the things meant to make life easier actually make it more expensive, forcing us to work longer hours and making life harder in the process. Think about your recent purchases and ask not whether they were good deals, but whether they were worth the life energy you traded for them. Was that gadget worth days of sitting in a cubicle, or that impulse buy worth minutes of your irreplaceable attention? When you begin asking these questions, saving money no longer requires force or restriction. Instead, you naturally begin protecting your life energy and guarding your time. You realize that many things you thought you wanted are not worth the piece of yourself required to obtain them. This awareness brings peace, shifting you from deprivation into choice. You are no longer a victim of prices or wages, but a conscious decision maker distributing your most valuable resource. You may discover that a simpler life with more free time feels richer than a luxurious life built on constant labor. Or you may find your work so meaningful that the exchange of energy feels balanced and joyful. Either way, the power returns to you. This is the foundation of true financial independence, which is not a number in a bank account, but the understanding that you are the master of your life energy. It is the ability to look at the world and say, my time is worth more than that. As you move through your day, simply observe where you exchange energy for money and where you exchange money back into goods and services. Do not judge or change anything yet. Just notice the flow and feel the weight of the hours you give and the value of what you receive. Ask yourself quietly and honestly whether there is balance and whether the trade feels fair. In the next chapter, we will take this awareness further by examining where your life energy is actually going in practical terms. We will learn to track money, not with the cold precision of an accountant, but with the honesty of someone who understands the value of their own existence. For now, sit with this truth. Your money is your life energy. It is precious, it is limited, and it belongs entirely to you. Part 3, the 9-Step Program Chapter 5. Step 1. Tracking every rupee dollar. Take a deep breath and settle into this moment, because we are entering a space that many people find intimidating, and it is important to approach it with calm and openness. We are going to talk about tracking every single rupee or dollar that moves through your life. But before thoughts of spreadsheets, budgets, or guilt arise, set them gently aside. This is not a lesson in accounting or a lecture on discipline. It is an invitation to wake up to the flow of your own life. We are entering the realm of pure observation. For most of us, money exists in a kind of fog, where we know it comes in and goes out, but everything in between feels like a blur of swipes, clicks, and rough guesses. When we consider looking more closely at our spending, resistance often appears. As if we are about to face a judge ready to point out our failures. We fear that the numbers will prove we are irresponsible, careless, or somehow not enough. But this fear comes from believing that tracking is about control. In this journey, tracking is actually about clarity. It is the difference between driving through thick fog and watching sunlight slowly reveal the road ahead. Imagine sitting beside a river, not trying to stop the water or push it faster, but simply watching leaves and branches float past. Some move quickly, some swirl in place, and some drift slowly, while you remain an observer on the bank. This is how we approach money, seeing every rupee and every dollar as energy moving through your world. When we track it, we are not judging where it goes. We are simply noticing that it is moving. As you begin to track every single unit of currency, something remarkable happens in your relationship with daily life. Unlike a budget, which tries to force future behavior, tracking quietly acknowledges the life you are living right now. A budget is a plan for a future not yet lived, while tracking is awareness of the present moment. Awareness itself is transformative, because habits do not need to be fought when they are clearly seen. Consider Sarah, who lived a fast-paced city life and always felt her money disappeared before the month was over. She stopped trying to save and decided instead to simply observe, carrying a small notebook and recording everything she spent. One day she noticed how much she spent on convenience food because her commute left her exhausted. She did not criticize herself or make rules. She simply saw the number. The next time she stood in line for an overpriced sandwich, she realized quietly that it was not worth the hour of life energy she had traded to buy it. The awareness accomplished what willpower never could. This practice is about honoring your life energy. Every purchase represents time, effort, and focus you will never get back. Ignoring where money goes is, in a way, ignoring yourself. Recording even the smallest purchase is a way of saying that this moment of your life matters. Whether it is food for your family or a magazine at an airport, the act of tracking is an act of respect. Consider a family that felt they never had enough for what they truly valued, such as traveling to see loved ones. They began tracking their spending together. not to police each other, but as a shared experiment in truth. They discovered that money was leaking away through forgotten subscriptions and impulse purchases that brought little joy. There was no blame or conflict, because the clarity made the choice obvious. They saw that their energy was flowing away from what mattered most, and they redirected it with ease. Many people ask whether they really need to track every small amount. The answer is yes, not because small amounts will ruin your finances, but because precision creates calm. When you know exactly where you stand, financial anxiety begins to lose its grip. Uncertainty fuels stress, while clarity, even when uncomfortable, creates peace. There is deep relief in being able to say, I know exactly where my energy went today. Tracking also reveals hidden emotional patterns. You may notice spending spikes after stressful days, moments of boredom, loneliness, or attempts to impress others. We do not look for these patterns to criticize ourselves, but to understand ourselves. When you see that a purchase was an attempt to buy comfort, you can begin to explore better ways to meet that need. The numbers become a mirror, reflecting your inner world. As you move through your days, treat tracking as a gentle habit. Record expenses as they happen, rather than relying on memory, which tends to hide what makes us uncomfortable. Use any method that keeps you present, whether it is a notebook, an app, or collecting receipts. The method does not matter. The intention does. You are becoming a witness to your own life. In this program, there is no such thing as a bad expense. There is only information. By removing labels of good and bad, you remove judgment and build self-trust. You are proving that you can face reality without turning away. As days turn into weeks, the fog will continue to lift. You will move through life with growing confidence, no longer controlled by money or trying to control it through force. You will simply be aligned with it. This clarity prepares you for everything that comes next. Without knowing where you are, it is impossible to decide where you want to go. Soon, we will take the next step and explore what your time is truly worth through the concept of your real hourly wage. But for now, your only task is to watch. Carry awareness like a quiet companion and notice every rupee, every dollar, and every cent. See your life clearly and kindly. You are no longer drifting. You are awake, present, and beginning to claim your freedom. Next, we will turn to the other side of the equation, the energy you give in exchange for the resources you receive. Chapter 6, Step 2, Understanding Income versus Life. Energy. Take a quiet moment as we step into this next space of reflection, where we begin to gently examine the number we are told we earn and the meaning we automatically attach to it. We are taught to see a salary or hourly rate as a fixed truth, believing that a higher number must naturally mean more wealth, more freedom, and more choice. Yet, when we look closely at the world around us, we often see people earning impressive incomes while feeling trapped, exhausted, and starved for time. This contrast invites an important question. Is the number on a payslip really telling the whole story? The truth is that income is only a starting point, the beginning of a deeper conversation about what we are actually exchanging for our money. What we are truly trading is our life energy, the most precious and finite resource we will ever possess. When we view income only through the lens of salary, we are seeing an incomplete picture. To see the full picture, we must look at the invisible edges of our working lives. There is the time spent waking early to prepare for work, commuting through traffic or crowded trains, and mentally shifting into work mode. There is also the time spent recovering afterward, decompressing in silence or staring at a screen because there is no energy left for anything else. All of these hours belong to the job, even if they never appear on a timesheet. If a role requires 15 additional hours each week to prepare for it, travel to it, and recover from it, those hours are part of what you are trading for your paycheck. Yet we rarely include this time when calculating what we truly earn. Alongside time costs, there are financial costs that quietly accompany our work. These include clothing bought to meet workplace expectations, convenience, food purchased due to exhaustion, and paid services that compensate for lack of time. There are also vacations framed as necessary escapes, taken not for joy but to recover from chronic burnout. Add in commuting expenses, childcare costs, and daily purchases made simply to stay alert, and the true cost of working becomes clearer. These are not just personal expenses. They are the price of maintaining employment. When we subtract these costs from our income, the amount we actually bring home changes dramatically. Consider someone like David, a highly successful professional whose income looked extraordinary on paper. He lived in a beautiful home, drove a premium car, and held a prestigious position. But his daily reality was early mornings, late nights, and weekends interrupted by urgent messages. To cope, he outsourced nearly every aspect of his life and spent heavily on convenience because he had no time. When David finally examined his situation honestly, he made a sobering discovery. After accounting for unpaid hours and subtracting the money spent just to survive his job, his earnings per hour of life were shockingly low. The prestige of his salary had been masking the true cost of his exhaustion. This realization introduces the concept of the true hourly wage. This is not a harsh formula meant to discourage you, but a lens designed to bring clarity. It allows you to see what an hour of your life is truly yielding. Through this lens, you are not judging your choices, only asking an honest question about exchange. How much of my life energy am I giving, and what am I actually receiving in return? This way of seeing can completely reshape how we evaluate different paths. Consider Alina, who left a demanding corporate job for a lower-paying role. From the outside, it looked like a step backward, but Alina had done the quiet work of observation. Her new role eliminated a stressful commute, reduced expenses, and left her with energy to cook, rest, and enjoy her weekends. Though her salary was lower, her true hourly wage was higher, and her sense of calm and control was greater than ever. Sometimes an opportunity appears attractive until we view it through the lens of true hourly wage. A promotion with a raise may bring pride at first, but also longer hours, frequent travel, and constant mental strain. Over time, new expenses appear in the form of remedies for stress, lost sleep, and emotional recovery. Once the extra hours and costs are included, the raise may vanish entirely. This awareness is not meant to dampen ambition, but to ensure decisions are made with open eyes. When you understand your true hourly wage, your relationship with spending begins to change naturally. You no longer see only price tags, you see hours of your life. A purchase becomes a question of whether it is worth days of commuting, working, and recovery. Sometimes the answer is yes, but often the desire fades without any sense of restriction. You are not denying yourself. You are choosing consciously. In the days ahead, gently observe your own working life. Notice the hours that surround your job and the money spent to sustain it. Do not rush to make changes or judge yourself. Allow the full picture to come into focus and let the awareness settle quietly. This understanding becomes the bridge to the next step. Once we know the real value of our life energy, we can begin to evaluate our spending not just in money, but in fulfillment. Let us turn the page and explore how to measure what we buy against the deeper currency of life satisfaction. Chapter 7, Step 3, Monthly Spending Awareness. Let us pause for a moment and take a deep breath together as we reach the end of a month and step into a more reflective way of looking at our money. Instead of asking only how much you spent, consider asking how the past month actually felt in your body and mind. Did you feel rushed or expansive, burdened by obligation, or lifted by genuine joy? The numbers you have been tracking are not cold data points. They are a map of your recent past and a story of where your life energy went and what you received in return. When you gather your monthly expenses and look at them as a whole, you are gazing into a mirror reflecting your daily existence. Every transaction is a small heartbeat of your month, revealing where you sought comfort, relief, or a moment of regained time. Money flows tell an honest story about hidden anxieties, daily pressures, and unspoken longings. As you review your spending, you may notice categories that seem reasonable on the surface, but leave you feeling strangely empty. You traded hours of life energy for these purchases, yet they offer little lasting satisfaction. Consider Marcus, who noticed a large cluster of expenses tied to weekend outings and social entertainment. For years, he assumed these costs were the necessary price of relaxation after an exhausting work week. But when he reviewed his monthly totals, he realized these nights left him drained and emotionally depleted. The spending did not nourish him. It was driven by fatigue and routine, not joy. Seeing this did not require self-criticism, only the recognition that his life energy was flowing into places that brought no fulfillment. Now, consider Maya, who discovered a small recurring expense for entry into a local public garden. Though the cost was minimal, reflecting on it filled her with a deep sense of peace and connection. Those quiet mornings among trees and birds were the highlight of her week. The life energy exchanged was tiny, yet the return in calm and clarity was immense. This contrast reveals that fulfillment is rarely connected to the size of a price tag. As you explore your own month, you will likely see similar patterns. You may notice convenience purchases, forgotten subscriptions, or expenses driven by expectation rather than desire. The instinctive reaction is often guilt or a sudden urge to restrict and control. But this process is not about correction or punishment. It is about observation without judgment. When awareness is clear and honest, change happens naturally. Human beings move away from pain and toward joy once they can see the difference. When you realize the purchase offers no comfort for the life energy it costs, the desire for it begins to fade on its own. You do not need willpower because clarity dissolves the urge. Your life energy naturally flows toward what nourishes you, just as a plant turns toward sunlight. This practice brings deep comfort by removing the pressure to be perfect with money. You are no longer forcing your life into a rigid budget defined by external rules. Instead, you are shaping a life guided by your own inner compass. Each monthly review becomes a gentle question. Was the value I received worth the life energy I spent? When the answer is yes, those choices are worth celebrating and expanding. When the answer is no, it becomes a moment of learning, not failure. Take your time with this reflection and allow yourself to feel the emotional weight of your spending without judgment. Notice where money feels heavy and where it feels light and supportive. You are learning the language of your own fulfillment and becoming fluent in its signals. As this awareness deepens, you will naturally begin to ask larger questions about alignment and meaning. You will start to explore not just how you spend, but why you spend and what truly matters in your life. Let us carry this quiet illumination forward into the next chapter, where we will learn how to align the flow of money with the core values that define who you want to be. Chapter 8, Step 4. Aligning spending with values. There is a quiet conversation constantly unfolding beneath the noise of daily life. A dialogue between who we believe we are and who our actions reveal us to be. Nowhere is this conversation clearer, yet more often ignored, than in the way we spend our money. We often treat finances as a separate department of life, governed by math and necessity, disconnected from our hearts and deeper purpose. But money is not just currency. It is a tangible expression of our life energy. Every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of life we want to live and the kind of world we want to support. When we look closely at how this energy flows, we often discover a gap between what we say we value and what our spending actually supports. We may say family matters most, yet our resources fund lifestyles that keep us working long hours away from the people we love. We may claim to value health, while our spending reflects convenience foods, unused memberships, and stress relief for a life that undermines well-being. We may say we value freedom, yet bind our future income to debt for fleeting satisfaction. This misalignment is rarely intentional or rooted in bad character. It usually happens through gradual drift, shaped by cultural habits and unexamined routines. We are taught to spend to soothe stress, to signal worth, to belong, and to keep up. Over time, these habits harden, covering our true desires and dulling our awareness of what actually matters. Aligning spending with values is not about deprivation or self-punishment. It is about waking up and reading the biography of your life as written in your transaction history. It is about asking whether the person revealed by that story is the person you want to become. When we stop seeing spending as obligation and start seeing it as a mirror, clarity emerges. If someone examined your last 6 months of spending without knowing you, what would they conclude you value most? Would they see creativity or accumulation, connection or appearance, presence or performance? This kind of honesty can feel uncomfortable at first. We may see that our life energy has been flowing into things that drain us rather than nourish us. Consider the familiar example of upgrading to a larger home in pursuit of comfort and hospitality. The intention is warmth, togetherness, and shared joy. But the mortgage demands longer work hours, maintenance consumes weekends, and financial stress fills the house. The spending contradicts the value, as the cost of the sanctuary destroys the peace meant to live within it. Now imagine the shift when spending aligns with reality. A smaller, manageable home reduces financial pressure, frees time, and opens space for rest and connection. The house becomes smaller, but the home grows larger. Spending now supports connection instead of competing with it. This alignment also reshapes our relationship with everyday pleasures. When disconnected from values, we spend to numb discomfort or escape boredom. When aligned, spending becomes intentional rather than compensatory. The lunch, the gadget, or the experience may still exist, but the motivation changes. What once served as distraction becomes a deliberate expression of joy or creativity. The action looks the same on the outside, but the inner experience is completely different. Alignment creates coherence, the feeling that all parts of life are moving in the same direction. When values are clear, decisions become simpler. Things that do not serve your values lose their pull without effort. You are not denying yourself, you are preserving yourself. Consider the value of friendship. Many of us treasure our friends, yet modern socializing often comes with high financial expectations. When money feels tight, we withdraw, believing we cannot afford connection. But connection does not require spending, it requires presence. Aligning spending with this value may mean shared meals, walks, or simple gatherings. As costs decrease, interaction becomes sustainable, and fulfillment increases. This reveals a central truth of the process. When spending aligns with values, overall expenses usually fall naturally. We stop funding what does not matter and release the clutter that suffocates us. What remains is a life shaped intentionally rather than reactively. This clarity builds trust with yourself. You feel peace knowing your resources are supporting what you truly love. Spending becomes guilt-free because it no longer competes with unspoken priorities. The internal conflict fades as shoulds give way to simple alignment. As you move through your days, carry this lens gently. Before each purchase, Pause for a single breath and ask whether it brings you closer to what matters or pulls you away. Do not judge the answer, just notice it. Notice the difference between momentary excitement and lasting resonance. By practicing this awareness, you prepare for the next step. When values are clear, we often discover we need far less than we believed. The high cost of living reveals itself as the cost of misalignment. As excess falls away, we begin to let go, not through force, but through understanding, and we step closer to a life that fits who we truly are. Part 3, Chapter 9, Step 5. Minimizing expenses without deprivation. When we hear the phrase reducing expenses, the body often tightens, reacting with an instinctive bracing against what we assume will be loss, restriction, or sacrifice. We have been conditioned to believe that spending money is the same as living fully, and that spending less must therefore mean living less. This belief paints a picture of scarcity, of constant denial, of watching life from the sidelines while others enjoy themselves. But this fear rests on a misunderstanding of what actually brings satisfaction. When we look closely, much of our spending is not feeding joy, but soothing stress, numbing boredom, or sustaining unconscious habits. The invitation of this chapter is not punishment or austerity. It is the careful removal of clutter, so that genuine delight can be felt more clearly. A lighter life, surprisingly, often carries more depth and richness. Consider the idea of sufficiency. In our culture, we are pushed past enough and into excess under the illusion that more is always better. Yet experience tells us otherwise, as pleasure peaks and then declines beyond a certain point. Reducing expenses is simply learning to stop at the point of maximum satisfaction, before value turns into regret. Many expenses are symptoms of a disorganized life rather than true needs. We buy unhealthy takeout not for pleasure, but because exhaustion has replaced energy. We pay for speed and convenience because we are overwhelmed, not because it enriches us. We buy new items because we cannot find what we already own. In these moments, money is being used to patch leaks in our vitality. When we address the root causes and reclaim time and energy, these expenses dissolve naturally. This is not deprivation, but substitution. Instead of denying yourself food, you gain nourishment and calm. Instead of denying yourself clothing, you rediscover what you already value. Costs fall while quality of life rises. There is also spending that acts as a stand-in for identity. We buy objects to signal who we want to be instead of practicing becoming that person. Expensive tools often substitute for lived experience, gathering dust while the desire remains unmet. When we engage directly with the activity itself, the value returns without the financial drain. Reducing expenses becomes a creative exchange, replacing symbols with substance. A library card replaces the bookstore while adding community. A walk in nature replaces costly indulgence while offering clarity and calm. Connection deepens more easily over simple shared moments than expensive venues. This process requires honest attention. We must look at recurring charges and ask whether they still belong to the life we are living now. Subscriptions often persist long after the version of us they served has moved on. Canceling them is not loss, but recognition and renewal. Resistance often arises from fear of social judgment. We worry that spending less signals failure or loss of status. But belonging is never purchased. When you step off the treadmill of consumption, you often become an example of calm and confidence for others. As unnecessary spending falls away, a shift occurs inside. The anxiety that lives between earning and spending begins to quiet. Lower needs create greater resilience and reduce dependence on constant income growth. This is the opposite of deprivation. Deprivation is wanting something and denying it. Intelligent reduction is realizing you no longer want it because you have found a better path to the feeling you sought. When you stop buying approval, you gain freedom from needing it. When you stop buying distraction, you gain access to your own attention. This process is like pruning a tree. You remove what drains energy so the essential branches can thrive. Your life energy becomes concentrated where it truly matters. The physical environment responds as well. Fewer possessions create calmer spaces that are easier to maintain. Each remaining item earns its place through use or love. You shift from managing clutter to curating a life. This lightness translates directly into freedom. Every expense reduced lowers the threshold you must cross each month to feel secure. It buys future time and improves sleep and peace of mind. As you move forward, view every potential reduction as liberation rather than loss. Ask whether an expense frees you or binds you. Ask whether it expands your life or weighs it down. You may find joy in the creativity of elegant simplicity. Repairing replaces replacing. Borrowing replaces owning. And restraint reveals inner strength. As consumer noise fades, space opens for deeper questions. If you need less money to live well, what does that mean for how you spend your days? If the pressure lifts, do you still want the same routine? This brings us to a turning point. Once you realize how little you truly need to be happy, You are no longer captive to your paycheck. You are free to examine your work not only for what it pays, but for what it costs. And you are free to ask whether that exchange is worthy of the one life you have to live. Chapter 10. Step 6. Valuing work without being trapped by it. There is a question we ask almost instinctively when meeting someone for the first time, a social reflex meant to place them on our internal map of the world. And that question is usually, what do you do? What we are really asking is not what brings them joy or how they experience their days, but how they earn their money. And over time, this answer has become a primary definition of identity. In modern culture, we are our job titles, our professions, and our paychecks. Even though this tight fusion between identity and employment is a relatively recent development in human history, that now feels permanent and unquestionable. We have absorbed the belief that our value as human beings is tied directly to economic output, so that earning means contributing, being busy means being important, and climbing a ladder means succeeding. This belief carries a hidden cost, because when our worth is equated with our work, we hand enormous power over our inner peace to employers and markets that can change without warning. When a job disappears, an industry shifts, or income shrinks, the loss feels personal, as if we have lost not just money, but a piece of ourselves. This chapter invites you to step back and examine the role of work in your life with calm objectivity, gently separating who you are from how you earn. It is an invitation to honor work as a necessary exchange of life energy for sustenance, without allowing it to become a prison that confines your spirit. Many of us recognize the feeling of working solely because we must, a feeling that shows up as a tight chest on Sunday evenings and an alarm clock that feels like an intrusion rather than a beginning. When every dollar we earn is already claimed by debt or obligation, work stops being a choice and becomes a sentence that must be served. In this state, we may remain in draining roles, tolerate exhausting environments, and perform tasks that feel meaningless, not because we care deeply about them, but because our lifestyle demands compliance. Dignity is often the first casualty of this arrangement, because fear of losing income causes us to compromise our values, silence our voices, and sacrifice health and relationships. This is the trap of work, a cage with invisible bars built from spending habits and the belief that there is no alternative. Now imagine a different scenario, one shaped by the steps you have already explored in this journey. Imagine someone who has aligned spending with values, removed unnecessary expenses, built savings, and created space between what they earn and what they need. In this situation, the relationship with work changes in a subtle but profound way, because the person is no longer showing up as a captive. They walk into work as someone who is choosing to be there today, rather than someone who must be there to avoid disaster. I once spoke with a man who spent decades in a hyper-sure corporate environment, driven for years by anxiety and the constant need to maintain a lifestyle he barely enjoyed. He needed bonuses to justify possessions and promotions to validate status. And the result was exhaustion, constant vigilance, and a life lived on edge. When he began simplifying, selling what weighed him down, and building savings that covered 1 year. Then, too, something unexpected happened. Although he stayed in his job, the emotional atmosphere shifted, and he found the courage to set boundaries, speak honestly, and approach conflict calmly. Because he no longer needed the job for immediate survival, he was able to do the work with clarity and professionalism rather than desperation. This is the paradox of financial integrity, because the less you need money to survive, the more freedom you have to do meaningful work. When fear loosens its grip, you can focus on quality instead of politics, honesty instead of self-protection, and contribution instead of compliance. Work regains dignity when it is chosen rather than forced, becoming a conscious offering of life energy rather than a desperate exchange. This shift also broadens how we define work itself, allowing us to see that paid employment is only one form of valuable effort. Raising children, caring for family, growing food, volunteering, creating art, and supporting community are all forms of work, even if no paycheck accompanies them. In a system that values only paid labor, these activities are often dismissed or made invisible. But freedom from financial pressure allows us to honor them properly. When you are not trapped by maximizing income at all costs, you can choose work that leaves room for health, service, creativity, and care. Valuing work without being trapped by it means understanding that a job is a tool, not a definition of life. Like any tool, it can be useful and even noble. But when worshipped or used without rest, it becomes a burden. By managing your relationship with money, you place work back in its proper role, something you use with intention rather than something that controls you. This perspective restores balance, allowing you to appreciate what employment provides while acknowledging what it takes away. You stop asking your job to be your identity, your community, and your purpose, and in doing so, you experience a deep sense of relief. Ambition does not disappear under this model, but it changes character. Shifting from frantic striving to calm self-expression, you may find that you no longer want to retire from something, but instead want to retire towards something meaningful. When work no longer rules your life, you can see clearly that time is your most precious and non-renewable resource. Selling that time becomes a deliberate choice, one that demands respect, not just in compensation, but in meaning or freedom. The purpose of this step is not to stop working, but to stop striving, so that labor becomes an offering rather than a tax. When this shift occurs, you stand firmly on the ground of your own prudence and view work as a field to be tended rather than a master to be served. As this relationship matures, a new horizon appears, where savings and thoughtful choices quietly build a foundation for future freedom. This foundation becomes a living engine, growing steadily through the gap between income and expenses. And as we turn to the next chapter, we will explore how this engine expands, carrying you toward a place where working for money becomes optional, and working for life becomes the only work that truly remains. Chapter 11, Step 7, From Savings to Financial Independence. Take a quiet breath and settle into a phrase that often carries heavy expectations. Financial independence, a term that usually triggers extreme images of either effortless luxury or harsh deprivation. We imagine either lounging on a distant beach without a care in the world or living a joyless life of sacrifice just to survive the future. But both images miss the truth. True financial independence is not a dramatic finish line or an escape from reality. It is the quiet, steady accumulation of choice and the growing realization that your life belongs to you. Up to this point, you have been observing the flow of your money, learning what you earn, what you spend, and how to align those flows with what genuinely brings satisfaction. As you naturally reduce spending that drains you, a gap forms between what comes in and what goes out, and that gap is your savings. But savings are often misunderstood, treated as punishment or denial rather than what they truly are. Seen through the lens of life energy, saving is not deprivation, but preservation, because every unit of money you do not spend is a piece of your own time and energy you choose to keep. Each saved coin is stored life energy, held safely for future choices instead of being surrendered to immediate consumption. As this stored energy begins to grow, a subtle yet powerful shift occurs within you. Imagine a family that lived for years in constant anxiety, where every unexpected expense felt like a threat to survival. As they slowly aligned spending with values, a small financial cushion formed, and one day an unexpected repair appeared. For the first time, it was not a crisis, but simply an inconvenience, because the money was already there. The relief they felt was not about wealth, but about nervous system of peace. When money stopped being a source of fear, that quiet relief is the first whisper of financial independence. As your reserve grows, you begin to see that financial independence is not a single destination reached at the end of a career. It exists on a wide spectrum, and its benefits begin long before work becomes optional. Freedom starts the moment your dependence on the next paycheck begins to loosen. Consider a woman named Clara, who spent years in a demanding career, feeling trapped by her need for income. As she slowly built savings over time, the balance of power in her life began to shift. She did not quit her job, but she stopped working late out of fear and began speaking honestly in meetings. The job remained the same, but her relationship to it changed completely. Because her savings had purchased courage, she was experiencing partial financial independence, and it brought lightness and confidence into her daily life. This journey requires patience, especially in a world that glorifies speed and overnight success. The kind of security we are building cannot be rushed, because it grows quietly through consistent alignment over time. Some months you will save more, and some months less, and both are part of the process. What matters is not how fast you move, but the direction you are facing. You are steadily building a protective foundation of peace around yourself and those you care about. There is no benefit in comparing your progress to anyone else's. Another person's path has nothing to do with your values, your needs, or your definition of a good life. Comparison only distracts you from the quiet strength of what you are creating. As time passes, you may notice that the anxiety that once followed you has faded. You begin making decisions based on desire and intention rather than survival. You are reclaiming your time, your health, and your inner stability. This is true wealth, the freedom to breathe deeply, sleep soundly, and shape your days without fear. As your reservoir of stored life energy continues to deepen, it eventually reaches a new threshold. At that point, your money no longer simply rests. It begins to support you on its own. We are approaching the stage where your stored energy can be nurtured, planted carefully like a seed. In the next chapter, we will explore how this seed grows into a sustaining force, quietly working in the background to support your freedom for the rest of your life. Chapter 12, Step 8, Investing for Long-Term Independence. Let us take a slow, steady breath as we step into a subject that often brings unease. Because for many people the word investing immediately triggers fear, confusion, and images of chaos and loss. We have been conditioned to see financial markets as unpredictable storms where experts win and ordinary people lose, filled with complex charts, frantic voices, and the terrifying possibility of losing the life energy we worked so hard to save. Feeling hesitant is natural when we imagine placing our precious stored energy into something that appears uncertain. But this chapter invites you to see investing through a completely different lens. We are not talking about excitement, prediction, or trying to outsmart anyone, but about using investing as a quiet, protective vessel for your future. Consider the savings you have begun to accumulate, which are not merely numbers but stored representations of your time, effort, and vitality. Leaving this energy idle is like storing seeds in a dark drawer where they remain safe but never grow, slowly losing value as the cost of living rises around them. Investing, at its most practical level, is simply the act of planting those seeds in fertile soil so they can grow quietly over time. Through investing, your stored life energy begins to work gently in the background, reducing the need for you to work endlessly in the foreground. The goal of investing is not excitement, because sustainable investing is meant to be calm and even boring in the best possible way. When investing becomes speculation, stress returns, and life energy is once again drained by constant attention and emotional swings. Consider Julian, who believed successful investing required daily engagement, constant monitoring, and frequent decisions based on short-term movements. He spent his evenings staring at screens, emotionally tied to every rise and fall, unknowingly turning investing into another demanding job. Though he aimed to build wealth, he continued trading peace, attention, and present moments for the hope of future gain. Now contrast this with Sarah, who understood that her true goal was freedom, not proving intelligence or winning a game. She chose simple, broad, and stable investments that reflected the long-term growth of the world rather than short-term excitement. Once her monthly contribution was made, she stepped away from the noise and returned to living her life fully. She walked outside, read books, slept well, and trusted the natural cycles of growth and decline without panic. Sarah knew she was planting a forest for decades ahead, not chasing a harvest for tomorrow, and this patience gave her deep peace. By choosing steadiness over speculation, she protected her daily joy while her stored energy quietly multiplied. This is the heart of investing for long-term independence, an act of trust in time rather than in prediction. You do not need expert knowledge, complex strategies, or constant engagement to do this well. What you need is patience, discipline, and the willingness to let go of control over short-term outcomes. When you release the need to react to every fluctuation, you free yourself from the anxious noise that surrounds so many investors. The true purpose of investing is to gradually replace labor with the gentle yield of capital. You are building a bridge between the life where you must work for money and the life where your time belongs fully to you. There will always be voices urging urgency, warning of missed opportunities or impending disaster. Urgency is the enemy of clarity, and when it appears, you can return to the foundation you have built. You are not investing for luxury or status, but to protect your future self from being forced into work that drains them. You are investing so one day you can choose how to spend your mornings without consulting schedules or permission. Each calm, consistent contribution purchases a little more freedom in the future. You are buying the ability to say no, to rest, to heal, to create, and to live without constant pressure. When investments are viewed as guardians of future independence, daily market movements lose their power to frighten you. You understand that seasons will change, but the roots you are planting grow stronger with time. As you continue this journey, be gentle with yourself, especially if you are starting late or starting small. The size of the seed matters far less than consistency, patience, and trust in time. You have already done the hardest work by becoming aware of your spending and honoring your life energy. Investing is simply the final structure that protects and sustains that awareness. Take a deep breath and feel the ground beneath you, knowing you are building something real and lasting. The fear of the unknown begins to fade, replaced by the quiet confidence of a steady plan. You are no longer working merely to survive, but preparing deliberately to thrive. As we move toward our final reflection, we will explore what life looks like when stored energy fully sustains you. We will step across the threshold into full financial independence and begin redefining success as a life where money is no longer the loudest voice. Let us turn the page and imagine that extraordinary possibility. Chapter 13, Step 9, Financial Independence. What it really means. Take a slow, deep breath and settle into this moment of stillness as we arrive at a phrase that often sparkles with distant promises: financial independence. Many people imagine this state as a grand escape, a permanent vacation, or a summit of wealth that separates them from ordinary life. But true financial independence is not a trophy, a finish line, or a dramatic withdrawal from the world. It is something far quieter and far more intimate: the restoration of your own agency. It is the moment when the constant internal noise of survival fades, allowing the deeper rhythm of your life to finally be heard. Most of our lives are shaped by an invisible pressure we rarely notice until it lifts. The pressure of the word must. We must stay in draining jobs, accept compromises we resent, and carry constant worry because we do not feel safe. This pressure seeps into our bodies, our health, and our relationships, quietly shaping how we live and how we love. Financial independence gently removes this weight, shifting us from the anxious energy of I must to the calm clarity of I choose. This shift does not require a magical number and a bank account. It begins the moment you realize you have enough to breathe, enough to wait, and enough to say no. Consider Thomas, a man who spent decades in demanding work, believing independence was something reserved for late life. As he practiced awareness and alignment, he realized he had accumulated enough to meet his basic needs for years, even without immediate income. He did not quit his job overnight, but he stopped being afraid of it. He declined promotions that would steal his weekends and spoke with honesty and kindness where fear once ruled. Thomas discovered that independence is not leaving the desk, but removing the desk's power over the heart. Money did not create his independence. It merely made visible an inner state of freedom. We often think independence is a wall that protects us from the world, but it is actually a bridge that lets us return to life on our own terms. When the urgency to earn subsides, time stops being something we sell and becomes the medium in which we live. Moments stretch open as conversations linger, gardens invite patience, and creative pursuits find space without needing justification. Days are no longer measured by productivity, but by presence. This is the true wealth independence offers. The return of your attention. Think of Alina, who lived simply in a small apartment and owned little by conventional standards. She did not travel extravagantly or accumulate status symbols. Yet she reached independence early because her needs were modest and her life was sufficient. She volunteered, wrote, and lived with quiet purpose, not retired from life, but fully engaged with it. Alina escaped the cycle of earning more to spend more, and in doing so, found a security that eludes many with far greater wealth. Her independence was rooted not in net worth, but in self-trust. Sufficiency is the heartbeat of true financial independence. It marks the end of comparison and the end of being manipulated by endless promises of more. When you know your own point of enough, the world loses its power to push and pull you. You become steady, grounded, and aware that your worth is separate from your productivity. Independence also reshapes relationships. When survival dominates the mind, interactions become transactional and fear-driven. As independence grows, generosity becomes genuine, presence becomes possible, and kindness is freely chosen rather than strategically offered. You show up not because you must, but because you want to, with patience and attention unburdened by anxiety. This path is personal and gradual, not a race with a finish line or a comparison to anyone else's progress. Each step toward aligning money with values brings you closer to freedom, whether through accumulation or simplification. Both paths lead to the same quiet place where fear no longer sets the rules. Success is not measured in spreadsheets, but in sleep that comes easily and breath that feels unforced. As you sit with this understanding, notice any lingering urgency or fear and allow it to pass without resistance. You are building something meant to last a lifetime, and lasting structures are formed one stone at a time. There is no need for celebration or spectacle, only the steady reclaiming of your life. You are becoming someone who is no longer for sale. You are becoming someone who knows who they are and what they truly need. We are reaching the end of our exploration of money's mechanics, but standing at the beginning of a deeper journey. When survival is no longer the central question, a new one quietly emerges. What is my life for? From here, we move beyond numbers and into purpose, contribution, and the joy of giving back to a world that no longer frightens us. Let us step forward together, not as seekers of wealth, but as stewards of a life that is finally, fully our own. Part 4, Beyond Money, Chapter 14, Money and Purpose. There is a particular quiet that arrives when the struggle for survival finally eases. After years spent silencing the noise of bills, deadlines, and the constant anxiety about whether the future will be secure, for much of life, we devote enormous energy to managing this noise by working, saving, calculating, and adjusting, always focused on reaching a point of financial stability. Then one day, the numbers align, the graph lines cross, security is assured, and the noise stops. In that sudden silence, we encounter something rarely discussed in financial planning conversations. The void. For a long time, the central question was how to survive or how to get ahead. But once urgency fades, a quieter and more unsettling question emerges. What is my life for? Many people assume that money itself provides purpose, believing that freedom will arrive with meaning already attached. But money is not a map for living. It is only the ground beneath our feet, offering stability without direction. When earning is no longer the primary concern, we are left with the deeper task of defining what it means to truly live. This transition can feel disorienting, as illustrated by the story of a man who spent decades in a high-pressure career defined by problem-solving and performance. When he stepped away after reaching financial security, he expected joy but instead felt invisible, unsure of who he was without a title or paycheck. The silence of freedom initially felt heavy rather than liberating. Over time, however, his attention began to drift naturally toward activities that felt meaningful rather than productive. He found himself repairing broken items for neighbors, discovering satisfaction in restoring function in order to everyday objects. Through this, he realized his purpose had never been his job title, but the act of restoration itself. Money did not give him purpose. It gave him the time and freedom to discover it without needing to monetize it. This is the shift that occurs when we move beyond money, as we stop asking what the world will pay us for and start asking what the world needs from us. We begin to separate self-worth from net worth, moving from an economy that values productivity to one that values presence and contribution. Purpose, in this sense, is rarely a single grand mission, but an evolving relationship with life. It changes as we change, responding to different seasons and capacities. For someone who once focused entirely on advancement, purpose may later express itself as mentorship or service. What once took the form of climbing a ladder may become holding it steady for someone else. These contributions may never appear on a balance sheet, but they are deeply woven into the fabric of community. Financial clarity gives us the privilege of inefficiency, allowing us to do things that have no commercial value but immense human value. We can care for others, learn purely for curiosity, create for expression, and tend spaces that nourish life rather than profit. When money is no longer the master, time becomes a canvas instead of a commodity. This freedom, however, requires a new kind of discipline. Without external structures like schedules and supervisors, we must learn to listen to our own curiosity and conscience. We must be willing to explore without guarantees, to try and fail, and to trust that the journey itself has value. In this new arrangement, money takes its rightful place in the background. It becomes supportive infrastructure rather than the central character of our story. As long as it functions, it need not demand constant attention. With this shift, our understanding of work expands. Work becomes any meaningful expenditure of energy, whether it is raising children, caring for others, creating art, or serving a community. When financial pressure recedes, all forms of contribution regain dignity. A quiet peace emerges when actions align with values rather than expenses. We see that our jobs were never our identity, but simply a means to buy the time needed for self-discovery. Now that time is available, the deeper work can begin. This moment brings responsibility as well as freedom. When survival no longer dominates attention, the opportunity to serve arises naturally. With a full cup, generosity becomes an instinct rather than an obligation. Purpose becomes the pursuit of wholeness, the integration of skills, passions, experiences, and care into a life that feels coherent. It replaces the thrill of striving with the warmth of belonging. As you stand in this open space, beyond financial urgency, resist the impulse to fill the silence immediately. Allow boredom to surface, because boredom often precedes creativity. Ask yourself how you would spend an ordinary day if money were no object. What problems move you deeply, and where your attention naturally rests? These questions carry the seeds of purpose. They point toward a life that is not merely funded but fully lived. As these answers emerge, attention naturally widens beyond the self to the world we inhabit. This leads us to the final consideration of our journey: how to live not only with financial freedom, but with sustainability for the soul and the planet. That is where our attention will turn next. Chapter 1.5: A Sustainable, Meaningful Life. Take a deep breath and allow the air to settle in your lungs as we arrive at the end of a long journey, one that has carried us from the frantic noise of more toward the calm, steady pulse of enough. Think back to where we began, perhaps feeling that low-grade fever of modern life, the sense that no matter how hard you worked or how much you earned, something essential always felt missing. We examined the numbers, tracked the hours of our lives exchanged for money, and asked a simple but radical question about whether that trade was truly worth it. Now, standing at this final threshold, we find ourselves beyond the mechanics of money and fully in the open field of what comes next. Living a sustainable and meaningful life is not about reaching a flawless destination where everything is finished and nothing needs attention. It is a shift in how we hold our existence and how we relate to our energy, our time, and our choices. When we stop leaking life energy into things that do not serve us, something remarkable happens, because we gain not just financial stability, but a deeper sense of ourselves. This clarity naturally spreads outward, touching our bodies, our homes, our communities, and even the land beneath our feet. We begin to see that caring for our finances was, all along, an act of caring for life itself. Sustainability is often presented as a burden, a list of sacrifices required to protect a world that feels overwhelming. But through the lens of sufficiency, sustainability becomes an expression of respect rather than restriction. When hunger for excess fades, we naturally consume less, waste less, and desire less, not out of virtue, but because satisfaction has become deeper. Consider someone who stops buying cheap, disposable items and instead chooses one well-made object designed to last. They treat it with care, repair it when needed, and discover that this choice reduces clutter, stress, and environmental strain at the same time. Nothing was sacrificed, and much was gained, as permanence replaced anxiety and quality replaced constant replacement. This is how personal clarity quietly becomes global impact. A meaningful life grows from the recognition that time is our most precious non-renewable resource. When we are financially grounded, we stop trading time to save money and begin using money to protect our time. That reclaimed time is invested in what nourishes us. In teaching, listening, helping, and participating fully in life, we become contributors to our communities rather than exhausted consumers passing through them. Imagine a neighborhood where people are not rushing home, depleted from endless workdays, but instead have the margin to notice one another. Such communities are not built by massive wealth or grand programs, but by individuals who have reclaimed their attention and presence. True financial independence is the freedom to be present, to show up for life without the constant background hum of fear. Meaning is not something we must chase or discover in a distant place. It is what remains when distractions fall away and we stop asking money to define our worth, identity, and joy. It lives in shared meals, unhurried walks, and moments where attention replaces calculation. When money takes its proper place as a tool rather than a master, life regains its natural texture. There is humility and strength in realizing we do not need everything to be happy. Choosing sufficiency in a culture of excess is a quiet act of courage that frees enormous energy. That energy becomes available for integrity, creativity, service, and care. This path does not lead to lack, but to density, where each hour and each dollar carries intention. It is the choice of deep satisfaction over shallow accumulation. As you move forward, remember that this is a practice, not a performance. Old habits may return, and the call of more may grow loud again, but the direction of your gaze matters more than perfection. Each conscious choice about time and money is a vote for the kind of world you want to inhabit. Money, once a mirror of fear and exhaustion, can now reflect values, love, and commitment. The glass has been cleaned, and through it, the world appears larger, calmer, and more welcoming. The struggle has lifted, replaced by responsibility that feels light rather than heavy. You are no longer a passenger driven by unseen forces, but a navigator guided by your own convictions. There is peace in knowing your survival is secure, your needs are met, and your heart is open. May you step into the rest of your days with clarity, gentleness, and confidence. Money has been our subject, but life has always been our destination. And now, finally, you are home. If this journey through your money or your life has caused you to pause, reflect, or see money and life differently, then this audiobook has done its work. Creating this series required careful reading, deep reflection, and many hours of thoughtful writing and narration. Each chapter was shaped to preserve the soul of the book while presenting its ideas in a calm, timeless, and accessible form. This channel exists to bring enduring wisdom and life-shaping ideas into modern lives without noise, hype, or pressure. If you believe this work could help someone else slow down and gain clarity, consider liking this video so it can quietly reach more people. If you know someone seeking peace, balance, or a healthier relationship with money and life, share this audiobook with them. And if you would like to continue exploring books and ideas centered on wisdom, purpose, and long-term well-being, subscribe to the channel. More carefully crafted audiobooks and reflective series are on the way. Thank you for giving your time and attention, your most valuable life energy, to this journey. Until next time, live consciously and choose what truly matters.